Let's face it, photography is a game where mastery comes not from technical proficiency, but from creative flair. The expert photographers, where are they mining these endless seams of inspiration? Well, let's do a bit of role playing today and find out. How's it? Yeah, so what's it like to be a Joel Meyerowitz or Dan Winters, one of these experts who always seem to be just able to conjure up creative ideas at the drop of a hat? Well, I'm indebted to Vancouver Blue Sea, who posed the question on the channel recently, where they asked, how do you find inspiration and how do you put it into practice without turning to what can be quite expensive photo books or just aimlessly searching around the internet? In short, it comes down to being a visual magpie, about finding things that inspire you and filing them away. But of course, that begs the question, right? So okay, Alex, where am I going to find these things? Now, I don't know Dan's background, I don't know Joel's background, but I know my own background. And I think back to when I was at school. There's tons of music out there. But one day, a guy called Gareth comes to school with Pink Floyd, a wall. He says, oh, my brother's been listening to this. This is pretty cool. You should try it out. And that was my introduction to Pink Floyd. Right. And now I'm a huge fan. I could listen to Live at Pompeii on repeat for the rest of my life and I'll be happy. That's one way of people helping you find ideas within this noise that's around. I'm sure that when Joel and Dan and all the other photographers were getting started, they asked questions. They said to people whose opinion they said, like, can you introduce me to photographers? These ideas, whoever you are, hanging around with as a photographer at a camera club, just ask who the photographers you like. That leads itself to another question, like, what is inspiration? I sort of look at it and think, well, okay, these days it's a little bit more cut and dry because I'm specifically looking for inspiration, but also I know what I like. But I think back to when I was younger. And in the drive on the school run today, I was listening to Jesus Christ Superstar, the soundtrack, and I was a huge fan of that film when I was younger. And I remember that there's a beam of light in one of the opening scenes. It comes down and it picks out Jesus sitting on a rock. And even though I didn't know it, like my 7-year-old brain was like, it didn't go, wow, look at that God ray coming down. This was pretty cool. It sort of resonated with me. I inherently got the idea. And that's the formation of being aware of things, that you just kind of go, that looks quite nice. I like that idea, blah, 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 right? Just think back through your own experiences. Do it right now. What are you drawn to in terms of music? Do you like metal? Do you like jazz? What is it that you like? This is what we're looking for in inspiration. Now, sometimes you go down a little rabbit hole and you find things. We listen to Joel, we listen to Dan, we listen to everybody else. And it comes, and they introduce us to things. They introduce us to photographers who then introduce us to other photographers. But what if you don't have a starting point for finding new photographers to look at? What am I going to do, right, if I'm a Joel or Dan or somebody like that? Well, what I'm going to turn to, instead of asking other people's advice, is other visual mediums. Right? Photography doesn't exist in a vacuum. This frustrates me when I talk to people who I'm trying to help out with their photography or just generally online, and they look to photographers only for inspiration. So consequently, we end up with this sort of echo chamber that places like Instagram or what have you, where fads and certain process and looks and feels of images seem to dominate, and everybody just copies that. So you get stale images at the end. The reason why I think you get photographers who seem to always just be able to conjure up images out of a hat just for nothing is because they extend their view beyond photography. So they look at painting. I remember walking around the National Portrait Gallery. I didn't really go there for the photography. I can see portrait photography elsewhere. I want to see paintings. I want to see classic paintings, things of that nature. How do the classic portraitists pose people? What are they doing? That's bringing in inspiration from beyond that. Now, you might be a big film aficionado. You might love film. Throughout growing up, you'd watch films And you'd kind of notice, I would certainly notice, little things that interested me. Now, when I was at school, I didn't really care. They just come, that looks pretty cool, right? So I was building up a little bit of appreciation for this. But then when I get to photo school, I'm actively looking, I'm making notes. I had a little black book that I would scribble down ideas for photographs. And that's what you can do today. From now on, carry a little notepad around with you, something like that. Whenever you get an idea for a photograph, whenever you see something, just collect it. Be that visual magpie, just stick it in there. And you're starting to do exactly what all the people who have gone before us, they are bringing in ideas from all over the place. They collect things and they bring them in. So what are we going to do with all this stuff now? How are we going to actually put this into practice? So before we get into that, just a quick thank you to PicDrop, who you will have noticed have been sponsoring the channel over the last couple of months. And it is their ongoing support that has allowed me to focus on creating videos that are interesting and informative and educational rather than videos that just pander to the algorithm. So please go check out their software. It is, if you are involved in any way, shape and form in, uploading and sharing images with clients or family, PicDrop is so simple to use, right? I've been using with the cohorts where people upload their images to the assignments. We can then use them. I can make notes on them. We can view them all together. It has just made my life a godsend. So give it a whirl, try them out. They have a free trial. The link is in the description box below. And once again, a huge thank you to them for allowing me to continue to make these videos for you. And by the way, this is actually coffee, and I have a mug because I talk with my hands, and this is a vain attempt to try and anchor my hands out of the frame, but it doesn't always work. So, we got all this library of imagery that we've been sucking in and stuff like that. And how are we going to learn from it? How are we going to put this into practice in our own photographs? So my mind goes back to a couple of years ago where I was looking at Nadav Kender's work, for example, and I was seeing all this funky stuff he does with the lights. And this was a way of practically trying to emulate the image that inspires me. So that's one aspect. You can look at a photograph and go, right, what is it in here that the photographer is doing that I would like to replicate? So as we're looking at these photographs, let me know, what is it in these images that you think we can take from them to put into your own photographs? Are there elements that, leap out at you? You go, oh, that's a cool idea. Let us know in the comments, share your thoughts. What is right about these photographs for you? And see how other people have a different interpretation of those images. The answer to these questions, how do you apply the things in your photograph? It's going to be unique for everyone. In my own sense, I sort of started noticing it coming into play when I was at photo school. And I was at the time, I was a big Robert Mapplethorpe fan. I still am. He was one of the first sort of serious photographers I was introduced to. And also at the same time, I was into, Bob Carlos Clark. There we go. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was Bob Carlos Clark. Because I loved that idea. This is another example where I found Bob Carlos Clark because he did the cover of a Damned album that was and I was, into that kind of music. Oh, there's a pretty cool picture. Who took? Oh, it's this guy called Bob Carlos Clark. Who's he? Oh, look, he's in a magazine. That's where, so you see how that kind of rabbit hole works. So I took the two ideas. Bob Carlos Clark would be the forks, the intertwining forks, and I melded that with Mapplethorpe's slightly more so S&M stuff. I had a studded punk belt at the time, and I took the belt off and I wrapped it around the forks to combine two ideas that I'd seen from other people. So that's taking a bit of an inspiration and combining it. So those are kind of practical elements of, taking the photograph and, mixing it up. But there's another aspect to this visual library that you're building up inside your head. And that is having bases of ideas. Bases, is that the right word? But, a wellspring of ideas you're constantly feeding to draw from. So again, I'm going back to my musical roots, and there was a photograph that I saw many years ago, probably in Alternative Press or somewhere like that, of Trent Reznor. So he of 9 Inch Nails, and he's I hope I can find the image, right? But if not, he's wearing like a turtleneck jumper, and it's up over his, sorry, I just shouldn't put my hand in front of my mouth. So it's up over his mouth, and all you can see is his top. And for years, that photograph, I liked it, but it lay dormant in my head. And one day I'm at the studio, I'm photographing, I'm trying to do something different. And for some reason, I've got this young man in front of me. This photograph popped into my head. Trent Reznor with the thing. And I went, hang on a second, you're quite, I think the kid was like 8 or something. And I had, at the time, I had a big coat. This is winter. And it has a big high collar on it. So I said, guy, yeah, put the coat on. And the result is this photograph. That's inspiration in action, that you don't know when these photographs are, or these images are going to surface, but they will surface when the time is right. And to begin with, it doesn't always, it feels like a slow process, right? But the more that you collect imagery, the more that you follow those rabbit holes, those ideas, the more that it starts to become natural. So when you look at somebody like Joel or Dan, they've been photographing obviously long, but over that time, they have been collecting, they've been looking at photographs. Vancouver Blue Sea said aimlessly looking around the internet. And I think that's the heart of the problem, is we don't have a starting point. There's no roadmap. There's no compass in which to guide us to find these things. You just need to follow a couple of simple ideas. Look at the visual things that you already enjoy. Use those as a springboard. Investigate. Who took that picture? Who did this? Who did that? Find out more. Who influenced them? Have they done collaborations? When you look at photographs or images that you like, what is it about that image that you like? You don't have to replicate it. You don't have to do anything, but just think about it a bit more. Once you have all those place markers arranged, then the rest of the process becomes so much easier, because you have cut away all the dead wood that's kind of obscuring your stuff, and now the path is clear. In my career as a photographer, I have been influenced by, music covers, videos, films, books, art, you name it. If it's visual, I've been influenced by it. But there is one photographer who's been more influential than any other, and it's this person here. Thank you ever so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will see you again soon.